into the Appalachian Mountains, where the trees whisper warnings and the shadows move when no one's looking. If you've ever wondered what's out there, keep watching.
This is actually my husband Matt's experience at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia, affectionately known as Tala by paranormal enthusiasts, ghost hunters, etc. So I'm going to be referring to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum as Tala throughout this video because, my God, that is a long name. My name is Rachel. I'm a 9th generation Appalachian, meaning my ancestors immigrated here from Scotland back in the 1700s, and then we never left. Even though I wasn't there, every time that my husband and I talk about it, it gives me the creeps and the chills, which I absolutely love. Now, I think it's important to note that this took place back around 2009, 2010, so the mid-2000s, and I had to actually sit down with my husband and go back over the information to make sure I had it correct and to make sure that I had all the details that he could remember. For a quick backstory and information, Tala is located in Weston, West Virginia, which is quite literally in the middle of nowhere. And from what I gather, Weston specifically is very tiny. There's nothing there, and it almost looks and feels like the town was built around the asylum, which could very well be true. I didn't dig too deep because that's not the point of the story. Anyway, so Tala started construction in 1861, and in 1864, while the Civil War was happening, they were still building the asylum, but they were also taking in Union and Confederate soldiers to treat them after they were wounded in battle. So now that we've kind of set the scene and we have some information to place this asylum into history, let's get started. So my husband Matt went to the asylum back in the early 2000s. He actually went 3 times in total. 2 times he did the overnight ghost tour, and then 1 time he just did the daytime history tour. They still offer both tours as far as I know, and based on what it says on their website. They've also added a haunted house attraction that they have every year around Halloween, and they do all of these tours not only to spread information and keep the history alive and honor the patients that lived there as well as the staff, but they also use it to collect ongoing funds so that they can continue to preserve and restore the building and its history. All of the encounters that Matt had were on his very first overnight ghost tour and visit to the asylum. There are several stories about the asylum and the things that happened there over the years. What Matt shared with me is there is a room where a man put a bedpost on another man's head and stomped down on it. You can imagine what happened there. He was definitely unalived. There is a little girl's room where toys move and light up, and they call it Lily's room. And the Lily is apparently a spirit that stays there and frequents there and is very, very active with ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, and on the ghost tours. There is a lot of activity in the hallways. The hallways seem to be where a lot of things happen. You hear a lot of things. People have seen a lot of things. It's very, very active in the hallways of every floor. So the group is around 15 or so people, but they split them into about 3 smaller groups so that you can have a more intimate experience and everybody has a chance to interact, etc. So the big group was split into 3 little groups led by 3 different tour guides. And most of the activity that my husband mentioned happened in the hallways, the kitchen, Lily's room, the Civil War section, and then the violent men's ward. The spirits seemed to be active and interacting with the tour guide quite a bit that night, according to my husband, but these are his personal experiences that night. He said that he was asking spirits questions and asking them to turn the flashlight on and off, turn it on once for yes, flash it twice for no, etc. And he did get activity from that. He did have the flashlight blinking on and off, seeming to give intelligent responses to his questions. When they went to the kitchen, which stands out vividly in my mind from the Ghost Adventures and the Ghost Hunters episodes at Tala, I remember the kitchen because even on the screen it gave me the creeps. Bad energy rolling out of there. But anyway, my husband was there in person. When they went to the kitchen, he was looking around while the tour guide was giving them history information, and he saw a full body shadow figure standing in the doorway. Not a full body apparition, but a full body human shaped shadow figure just standing in the doorway, seemingly staring at them. When they were in the little girl's room, or Lily's room, where the toys are scattered across the floor and she interacts with people, they heard a lot of things, mostly paint chips falling, but is that paranormal, or was that just normal for a decaying building? He's not sure, but no one was talking, asking questions, interacting, but one little ball lit up randomly on the floor. I think that was just Lily letting them know, I don't really want to talk to you, but I am here. They also brought out divination rods and were asking them to move left, right, and cross depending on the answers to questions. I won't go too deep into divination rods because that's not part of the main story, but if you're interested, you can always look them up. As previously mentioned, asylums didn't just house adults who were incapable of caring for themselves or who were deemed insane. I actually hate that word, but what are you going to do? It was the times. So they also housed violent and criminally insane men and women. The asylum was obviously overcrowded, housing around 2,400 patients in a facility that was built to house 250 patients at a max. So with overcrowding, you get an asylum that is understaffed, and of course I'm sure it was underfunded, therefore the staff was underpaid. So you have a ratio of patients to staff that is highly skewed. And you have overworked, underpaid staff working with mentally ill, criminally insane, and violent patients. Unfortunately, the asylum also practiced cruel and unusual, abusive, quote-unquote, treatment practices, including ice baths and lobotomies. So we have an asylum full of tortured souls, both mentally, physically, emotionally, every way you could possibly think of. Unfortunately, patients also died there. Those walls hold years and years and years of pain, torture, and death. That brings us to the final encounter of the night. Welcome to part 2 and the final part of how one encounter with an entity in the violent men's ward at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum made my husband, who was a skeptic, a lifelong believer. So where we left off was kind of talking about all of the abuse and mistreatment, death, etc. that went on in the asylum over the years, and how the walls contain a lot of pain, trauma, and death, which to me is clearly negative energy. Also, I'm a believer in the paranormal, and I believe that violent death, torture, terrible circumstances leave behind, if nothing else, an energy or a residual haunt or a full-blown apparition, something nefarious. If you're new here, my name is Rachel. I'm a 9th generation Appalachian, meaning that my ancestors immigrated here from Scotland back in the late 1700s, and then we never left. My husband is on the 3rd floor of the asylum with his group who are touring the asylum for the overnight ghost hunt. So he's in his group and they're walking down the hallway of the violent men's ward. They get to the end of the hall where they have kind of like a cul-de-sac with windows where they would put wheelchairs and let people sit out there for, I guess, what you would call rec time. So they're all down there and they're listening, and the building is old. And if you've been in an old building from the 1800s or early 1900s, you know that it starts to settle. And by that, I mean it starts popping and groaning and creaking, especially when you have hardwood floors. Well, this ward had hardwood floors. So they were doing the natural popping and moving when you walk across them. Also, there's no air conditioner or heat in the building, and everybody's kind of bundled up because, again, it's near Halloween. And, excuse me, and everyone is bundled up against the cold. And, you know, heat makes things expand, especially wood. And then when it's cold, it shrinks. So things are moving, things are popping, things are making noise, especially because they've had weight on them from people walking around. However, they get to the end where the cul-de-sac is, and they don't hear the normal popping and moving of hardwood floors. They hear very distinct footsteps up and down the hallway, and general like movement, not paint chips falling, like people moving around. At this point, they have done the flashlight interaction, they've done the divining or divination rods, they've had encounters with the child in Lily's room, lighting up the ball. There's been different things, and everybody's kind of heightened, right? You get super excited when you actually get interaction with a spirit, or you're terrified. So either way, you're heightened. So everyone's heightened and they're kind of just ready to go at this point. So everyone's like, okay, let's go back down the hallway and get out of the violent men's ward. Now, my husband is 6'4". He has really, really long legs, and me being 5'9", even I have trouble keeping up with him sometimes. So he's walking at his regular kind of sped up, I want to get out of here as fast as I can without taking off into a run, and everybody else is a little bit behind him. And he's walking down the hall, and all of these room or cell doors on the violent men's ward are standing open. He gets to a little past the middle of the hallway. He's facing forward, walking. His only thought is, I want to get out of here. I don't like this. And suddenly, he gets rushed. He gets rushed in how he describes, he saw something come at him out of a cell in his peripheral vision that went through him, and he felt the wind off of this entity. So naturally, it scared the absolute shit out of him. It made him jump and curse, and then he just kind of took off down the hallway and left everybody behind. I get chills every time that we talk about this story, because I can just imagine myself in his shoes, walking down that hallway. You see something coming at you out of the corner of your eye in your peripheral vision, and before you can even turn to react to it, you feel it hit you by the wind off of it. Something like that changes you. That encounter alone turned him from a lifelong skeptic to a lifetime believer. He said he's never questioned ever again if the paranormal is real, if ghosts exist, if bad energy exists. He even could possibly entertain the thought of demons. But he said whatever that was not anything good. Which makes sense, because why would it rush him like that if it had any good intentions? I believe that spirits can have intelligent conversations and interactions where you ask them questions and they respond intelligently. And I also believe that there could be what some people call tricksters, who are just messy little spirits that like to scare people. And then I believe that there are residual haunts. So an example of a residual haunt would be maybe a nurse that goes up and down the stairs like she did every single day when she worked there. It's a pattern, right? It's a residual haunting. It's not intelligent. It's just kind of like, you know how when you leave a TV on, it can burn the image into the screen on the smart TV? It's kind of like that. It's like something burnt into a pattern in time that just repeats itself over and over again. And then I believe that there are also spirits that have bad intentions. They're angry, they're confused, they're sad, they're hurt. In this case, they could have anything going on from their lifetime, whether it was mental illness, abuse, torture, you name it. But I think being rushed by anything that you can only see out of the corner of your eye, however, you feel the wind off of it, in a building that has no heating and no air, that would absolutely make me a lifetime believer as well. But yeah, that's my husband's story about his experience with an entity, a spirit, whatever you want to call it, that turned him into 100% believer and opened up his mind to the possibility of the afterlife not being you just die and you leave, that some things and some people stay behind or get left behind. And ever since then, he's been sensitive to energies. And we both have experienced things together and separate.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, question everything, and don't follow the sounds in the dark.